Hey, Chilly Willy. It's time for another Collection Connection, the game that's really just an excuse to talk about records. I'll start with the album that my brother showed from his record collection this past Monday, give you my impressions of it. Sometimes it's an album I know and already have opinions on. Sometimes it's brand new to me, and I'll just tell you what I thought of it, along with anything I learned about it while trying to find an album in my collection to connect it to. Then I'll dazzle you with a connection that'll make your head spin. Maybe dazzle is a bit of an oversell, but at least we'll talk about it. Today we're starting with Rock at the Edge, a 1986 compilation from Arista Records that packaged up tracks from the mid to late 70s from the art rock Tortured Poet Society end of that label's roster. From there, I've connected it to an EP of covers released in 2020 called the Georgia EP by Death Cab for Cutie. What facet or quirk could an 80s comp of 70s music possibly have in common with a 2020 covers EP? Therein lies the challenge, because in this game, my brother and I aren't competing against each other, we are teamed up against you. I'll sprinkle some hints in amongst my observations, a little guidance that hopefully won't give it completely away, and if you believe you've worked it out, you can put your guess in the comments, where the first right answer will get a shout out in my brother's next video. But first, let's officially reveal the connection between the previous pair of albums, those being the Various Artists Rock at the Edge compilation and Starfish from the Church in 1988. The connection is that both had art direction done by Maud Gilman, who was Arista's art department head. I don't know exactly what her title would be, but I don't know that Eric explicitly, I don't recall in his video whether or not he explicitly excluded the fact that they were simply both on Arista Records, these two things, so maybe a little less surprising that they had a art director in common. But I would think that we would even had to take just the fact that they were both on Arista Records. However, nobody guessed it, at least at the time of my recording, so point goes to us, and with that, we can get on with the show. Alright, so let's talk about that record that my brother showed, and by my brother I mean Plastic Eric, who's over on the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel. On Monday he plays his half of the game, and his videos are on his channel, and he showed Rock at the Edge, a compilation that I'm unfamiliar with. In fact, did I just say it right? Rock at the Edge, right? Yeah. Which is funny because it made me immediately think of a compilation that I don't have, but I am aware of, called The Edge of Rock. Maybe I'll find a picture of it, but it was one I was more familiar with seeing that had like Camper Van Beethoven and bands that I listened to on it. But this Rock at the Edge, in spite of me not knowing this specific compilation, I actually own in various other formats most of the songs that were on it. There's two songs from Lou Reed's Street Hassle, which I have on a Lou Reed box set. I have Television's Marquee Moon, and the opening track of that is on here. And a box set, another box set called No Thanks, the Early Punk Rebellion, that has a number of the other tracks on it, I think including the Blondie, the Richard Hell and the Voivods, and were they the ones that did Blank Generation? I'm forgetting some of the names of the songs that were on there. There's only 3 songs that I didn't have. Weirdly, I don't own Patti Smith's Horses, but the Gloria that is on this compilation also features on it a John Hughes box set that I have. So go figure there. But what I didn't have was Patti Smith's cover of My Generation, or Iggy Pop's New Values, or Graham Parker's Saturday Night is Dead. So I listened to those tracks, and most of the others as well. I was not aware. I always thought that Ex Offender, which is the Blondie track on here, was a early non-album single. It was her first single, but it did feature on her first album. I just don't have that first album. The Street Hassle, the title track, I don't think, from what I could tell, that the compilation features the entire 11-minute song. I think it contains like a 4-minute section of it. But I listened to that, and I will admit that I don't listen to my Lou Reed all that much. I enjoy some of the Velvet Underground, and I really like his New York album. And I kind of wanted to fill in everything else with this box set when it came out 30 years ago now. But it's not something that I queue up very often. I got it for like Walk on the Wild Side and maybe a couple other tracks, but to kind of sweep everything I might want from Lou Reed up all at once, and I did not spend a lot of time listening to it. But I liked that Street Hassle. I thought was pretty good, so it's fun that I already own it. So what we have basically is a pretty sturdy little compilation. All the tracks kind of felt cohesive. It always feels like a little bit of a cop-out when there's multiple songs by the same artist on a comp like this. So the fact there are 2 Lou Reed songs and 2 Patti Smith songs, but maybe Arista's sort of art rock signings weren't all that deep. So maybe that's as far as they could go. Oh, and of course the Ian Jury, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, which I don't think appears on the original lineup of New Boots and Panties, but was added to most subsequent releases of it. And that is an album that I would very much like to get at some point, New Boots and Panties. But I do have the track. I have that one, which I think was on that 70s Punk Rebellion box set as well. And then I downloaded the individual track, Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick, which is my favorite from him. But I would love some Ian Dury in my collection at some point. Now, the fact that this was a sort of purpose-built but not iconic compilation from 1986 means that it was not available in any way on streaming platforms today. You won't really find many, if they're not nuggets or like C86, there's not a lot of compilations of that sort that find their way to release now in the streaming age. It was made to promote, certain things at a certain time. So I rebuilt what I could. I just kind of queued up individual tracks and played it. But it was a one-shot deal. It came out in 1986, never to be released again. It was only in the U.S. But from there, let's move on to my connection. That being from Death Cab for Cutie, the Georgia EP. Look at this. I'll do it artsy style. So I'm holding up an actual piece of vinyl today, which may or may not be a clue, but it came out in 2020. I don't like to talk a lot of politics. I'm here to talk about the music, and politics I feel like is going to muddy up the situation, but the fact of it is that this album was put together by Ben Gibbard of Death Cab to raise money for the second round of they reran the election in Georgia, and it was trying to raise money for Stacey Abrams for when they had to basically restage that election in Georgia in 2020. The reason this is pertinent is because as the Georgia EP, what it is 5 covers of Georgia-based bands. So there is Waterfalls from TLC, The King of Carrot Flowers, Part 1 from Neutral Milk Hotel, Fall on Me from REM, Flirted With You All My Life is, I think, Vic Chestnut, and Metal Heart, I'm already forgetting who. Oh look, as I was putting it away, I see. Couldn't remember who Metal Heart was by. It's on a great big sticker right on the front of the thing. It's from Cat Power. So there you go. So I was less familiar with those last two, and Metal Heart really makes me think of Death Cab's own Grapevine Fires. So it's already reminiscent of something for me. And they're fairly low-key covers. I think they're competent. I enjoy them. But they don't tear the roof off of anything. I think that probably works the best on Fall on Me. I like that cover. It feels like maybe a song that they have played for a long time. But it's fun to have TLC's Waterfalls on here. I do like the Vic Chestnut song. I think that there's some really good lyrics on there. And yeah, so initially it was not released. It was just self-released by the band as the fundraiser. And I downloaded it at that time. But later in a music store, becoming aware that there was not going to be a CD edition, it seemed, I ran across a copy. Their actual label, Barsuk Records, eventually did put it out, a version of it. So that's what I have here. It's still in the shrink wrap though, because I already had all the download files, but I like to have a hard copy of things. In this day and age, we're getting to a point where not everything comes out on CDs, as much as it breaks my heart, and as much as most of the people out there probably consuming music things on YouTube are full on vinyl at this point. It's probably the vinyl that is bringing them to the music community in the first place. Yeah, I still buy CDs, and I wish if there had been a CD version, I would have bought that. But I'm happy to have this, and it is a very good, quick EP. Should be some quick homework for Eric. Hopefully it is streamable out there somewhere. I didn't check beforehand, but I needed it for my connection. I have mostly everything that Death Cab did. We talked about them once early on. I think we did maybe Transatlanticism. I forget which album we talked about before on the channel, but I know we've done one other album. And in that episode, I said Death Cab always struck me as sort of like the REM of the 2000s. Not quite as like world dominating as U2 was. And I feel like Coldplay then was the U2 of the 2000s. But REM was always kind of hanging around. Death Cab was always kind of hanging around. Always had a bunch of different songs that would catch my ear and make me go, oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So in the same way, REM was never my favorite band, but they had a lot of good stuff. Death Cab, never been my favorite band, but I feel like they have a lot of good stuff. And so it is because of that, I have a lot of Death Cab for Cutie. I think I have all but maybe one or two of their earliest albums and a handful of the EPs that they have put out over time. I enjoy them, some more than others, but this one is a good one. The Georgia EP, kind of from start to finish, starts with 3 songs that I know well, and then moves on to 2 songs that are new to me, but are enjoyable, and I think would maybe be interesting, especially Vic Chestnut, which I think REM themselves have talked about admiring his stuff. But I'm blathering. I'm trying to keep this short. So if you think you know what the connection is between Rock at the Edge, the compilation from 1986, and this, the Georgia EP from Death Cab for Cutie, then throw that guess down into the comments, and the first right answer will get a shout out in Eric's video over on the Plastic Soundwave Cult on Monday. And with that, I thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Good show, Ponsonby.